Everybody, Dave Whitmarsh, Whitmarsh Consulting Group, Best Practice in HR. Today we're talking to someone that we just had a conversation about, and I'm surprised we haven't spoken real life because it seems like I see his name. He's an industry expert, a guru, one of the leading thought leaders. I don't have anything written down, Jim, so I'll leave you at that. So,
That's fine.
yeah.
I feel like
So
I gotta live up to that hype now.
yeah, well, yeah, it's funny, because like I said, I see your name and I've been, reading your diversity stuff for a long time, and it really is a unique phenomenon that when you read people's articles, or you see them for a long period of time, that there's a certain amount of knowledge you think you have about this person, but the reality is we've never met, right? Well,
Yeah,
although we've
sure.
probably bumped elbows a few times walking down, similar trade shows and things, but never formally been introduced. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to hearing your story firsthand.
Funny how the world works, you know.
Yeah, totally
So,
is. So,
um,
so tell us a bit about yourself and
yeah,
and how you got into this crazy space of recruiting.
sure. I've been involved in the recruitment industry for, gosh, 20 plus years, starting at the age of 10, obviously. Uh, my first gig was at MCI, a telecom company for you youngsters out there. And since then, I've worked for Siemens, Microsoft, Google, several startup companies. My last gig, I was the editor for SourceCon, the premier conference for all things sourcing. Presently, I am producing a newsletter called The Recruiting Life and a podcast called the Jim Stroud Podcast. And in both of those, I discuss things that are happening now and things are happening and what's happening next in the world of work. So
Yeah,
those
and
keep me
and
pretty busy.
sorry, and I was just going to remind anybody, Jim will provide me with all these links that you can sign up for all these things. It'll be below anywhere where you're seeing this, and make sure you sign up. I can promise you firsthand that you won't be disappointed with the quality of content that comes out of there. He is
Thank you.
renowned for being just right on the edge and super expert in anything recruiting. So sorry to interrupt there.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. I do put a lot of heart and soul into a lot of my work for sure.
That's all right, yeah. And so, and so is that where your podcast and newsletters, and so you help, how do you interact with the HR community or talent acquisition community from an internal standpoint? And then the
Sure,
follow-up question would be, how do you integrate with the vendor community?
sure. So, between my social media reach and my newsletter, and now podcast, I have about 70,000 or so followers, and I write about different topics that pretty much interest me about the world of work. Some of the things that I write about are kind of bizarre, but they are true, and I'll give some examples of that shortly. How I interact with the community is primarily through social media and through comments made on my newsletter. Um, I I am sponsored in my media through HR tech companies principally. So someone has a an ATS or a calendar app or something along those lines. Any kind of technology that would be of interest to recruiters, they will advertise in my newsletter or podcast. So that's generally how that works. Some of the things that I write about, the topics are somewhat unique, I think. I talk a lot about the future of work, and on that spectrum, I may talk about designer babies. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Mhm.
uh, that type of thing. But it's possibility now. Well, it's not possibility; it's reality now. Is that scientists have found ways to tinker with your DNA, with your chromosomes, And so if you are, say, if cancer runs in your family, they'll able to screen it out at the embryonic level. And so I'll take a subject like that and then I'll relate it to work in some way. I'll say, what happens when these designer babies enter the workforce? You know, they'll save companies a lot of money because companies won't pay a lot of benefits on a lot of health benefits for them because they would have been genetically enhanced to be uh, physically superior than regular human beings. Um, and when you realize that, I sort of look at the repercussions if that were to happen. So something that may happen is that companies may start preferring these type of designer babies in the workplace because they're spending less money on benefits because these procedures are more expensive. Then the people who are designer babies tend to come from richer families, meaning that they probably have more connections, meaning that they'll probably be preferred for the connections to enhance the businesses of the people that they work for. And people who are just regular, normal people who were born the natural way, they may feel like they're at a disadvantage, which may cause issues in the workplace. So I talk about I sort of take a Black Mirror view of the future and relate it to work in that sense. But then I'll also will talk about things like the um, school to prison pipeline, if you're familiar with that phenomenon. For
Hmm.
those who are not, there is a very strong concern about students who are falling behind academically in the high school phase or even in the grade school phase. And the way that the world is changing so rapidly with the advent of AI, if they're falling behind at the high school level, by the time they graduate, um, they won't be able to find work. It's already difficult for people who are experienced to find work in this age of AI. This new generation that's entering the workforce, and if they're not totally prepared for it, what are they going to do? They're going to be ripe for prison if they because they won't have any other alternatives. So that's a real concern. So I talk about things like that as well. I may talk about immigration issues, um, H-1B visa issues in particular, and just different things like that. So,
Yeah, that's
but
what I've always loved
yeah,
about like reading your stuff is like truthfully, I follow a lot of different folks and read a lot of different things, and once in a while you'll just pull something way out there, right, and tie it into and tie it in, and it's like, okay, that's pretty cool. I love how you do that, right? Versus, you know, the the tent regurgitation of how AI is going to, change recruiting, right? Like it's
I
just it's fun how you do that. And I really appreciate that as a reader.
appreciate that. One thing that I'm sort of fascinated with right now, I think I just posted on it on my LinkedIn profile. If anyone's curious, they can go check it out. There's this uh, debate I'm trying to start around skills training, right?
Mhm.
So it is an imperative, I think, for a lot of companies to train their people on AI, improve their AI literacy, because that's just where the world is going. And anyone who is looking or thinking about their career long term, they really need to think about ways to improve their AI literacy, how to use these different AI tools and what they mean, that kind of stuff, right? So some forward-thinking companies are offering this type of training to their company, to their employees already, which is great, which is good because they're able to learn new things, they're able to level up their skill set, and they're able to improve their career standing and become more valuable employees. But the question I have is, let's say you work for, I'll pick one, IBM, right? Because I know they have a lot of training. They train their employees in Salesforce too. They train their employees on AI processes and so forth. So let's say I work there and I'm hired as I don't know, office worker X, right? I take their classes, I learn all these new AI tools, I become more valuable to the company. Um, but my salary remains the same. If I'm new and improved based on these skill sets, so I'm able to prove that I know how to use these new skills And I'm able to show that because of these new skills, I've made things more efficient, or I was able to help the company make more money, then why shouldn't I be rewarded more so for that in terms of salary? Um, and so if I am not rewarded because of that, because of salary, is that an oversight or is that a strategic move by the company?
Mhm.
You know, if I can get David 2.0 and still pay the 1.0 salary, why wouldn't I as a company? But maybe companies aren't thinking about that just yet. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't know. But that's kind of the debate. I'm sort of that's something I'm ruminating right now. What do you think about that?
Well, well, it's interesting, right? And really, that's the ultimate. That just goes right back to straight capitalism, right? If you can
Mm,
exploit people for anything to get higher profits, then you do so. But the reality is that if that person that's being exploited realizes that they are the market, um, then they can take that skill elsewhere and bring profit to the next firm and get a get a salary increase which benefits them. It reminds me of in a way, I'm always fascinated with compensation, because
yeah,
especially in North America, because there's just pockets of North America that are vastly different to live in, right? Like if you're in New York City or LA or San Fran or a heart of Miami, you're in a very expensive area, right? Whereas if you're in West Virginia, Idaho, theoretically your cost of living is 20% of what it would be in those other places,
sure.
right? And so how do you relate to that, right? So where's the talent level versus compensation in that model?
I'll give you something to think about around that too, because this is something that I've been thinking about off and on for a few years actually. I think it was in when I was working at Randstad. I had this idea of how does technology impact compensation, right? So
Hmm.
before AI was the buzzword of the day, of the era, there was this other buzzword, RPA, standing for Robot Process Automation, which
Hmm.
was basically the precursor to AI, just a different name, right? And so an example of that might be the Calendly app, if you ever used Calendly before, just book your calendar, whatever. So if you had an HR coordinator, somebody who would handle things like that, book different interview times for candidates and hiring managers and so forth. If you now have an app that can do that, then that makes the HR coordinator's life easier because it's one less thing they have to do. But because it's one less thing they have to do, should that impact their salary overall? Because now you're doing X% less work because of this machine. And I
Hmm.
always thought that a debate will happen around that. If machines are able to reduce your workload by 10%, 12%, whatever, then companies will make an argument that they don't have to pay you as much because the machines are doing so much, right? So I'll look at that. But then I also looked at the examples of the ATM machines, right? I'm
Hmm.
old enough to remember when the ATM Tilly the Teller was the first ATM that came online. Wow, I've been around a long time. And I remember the controversy that people were saying that the ATMs are going to put tellers out of work and they won't do anything. I mean, they'll be discarded like Blockbuster video chains. But what happened was that he just started doing other duties, you know. So the salaries didn't necessarily change because of ATM. They just had them doing different things. So, but I always thought that if a certain duty is part of a certain job and you're able to automate that job, I always thought that would impact compensation in some way if you can find another duty to offset it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure that a lot of companies would want to actually go down that road because if you're removing something that's automated, um, typically you're, I shouldn't say typically, but my guess would be that you're replacing with something more strategic, right? So then, under your theory, then should you pay them more because now they have to use their brain for something more strategic versus something that's task driven?
True, true. But I'm not a compensation expert. I'm just throwing it against the wall
Yeah,
and
no,
see
but
if it sticks.
that's again, that's the type of stuff that I love about reading some of your articles is because they're just not traditional, right?
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is, if I can, I feel like I'm going on a tangent now. I'm thinking about some of the recent posts in my newsletter that generate a lot of comments and to me. And I'll mention this to you, see if it resonates with you. Have you heard of the the technology called digital twins?
No.
Okay, so digital twin technology works like this. Let's say you're building a new fancy engine for Boeing, right?
Hmm.
And you have all this equipment and you're going to make the ultimate engine. But before you actually put it together, you make a video game version of it, right? And the video game version works in the virtual world exactly as it would work in the physical world, right? So you are able to test the video game version 100 million times.
Hmm.
Everything possible that can happen. It goes too fast, goes too slow, a bird flies into it, all kinds of things, right? You're able to test the video game version a bunch of times. So by the time you make the actual engine, you already know how it's going to operate and everything. So it should be super safe, right? That technology has actually been around for a while. I think NASA started piloting that some years ago. What's happening now is that some companies, like Microsoft and a few others, are able to make digital twins of people, right? So let's
Mm.
say that you, David, you work for company X, and I'm able to put into my AI database system, whatever, all of the reports you've written, all the emails you've exchanged, all the Slacks you've made, um, maybe any video you made on behalf of the company. Put all that, mix all that into the AI soup, right? I then can ask AI, what would David do in this situation? This client is doing this, that, and the other. What did David do when this happened? Because he worked with the company for 7 years on these particular cases. What would he do? Right. So a company can take a virtual part of you, make a virtual version of you, and consult with you whether you're actually still working for the company or not. Right.
Yeah, I never even thought about that, but that's actually crazy, right? That's like all
Yeah.
your. I think that caused an actor strike in Los
Yeah.
Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're still seeing the repercussions of that too, because with the actors strike, this AI technology is able to clone someone's voice and face. And so I can make a movie with your likeness and not
Yeah.
necessarily pay you, or as some companies were trying to uh, give the blessing of the actors on. Let's say, David, okay, I'm going to pay you $1 million up front, right? And I'm going to use, but for that $1 million, you give me permission to use your likeness and your voice in X amount of movies.
Hmm.
You say $1 million up front, sure, right? But then let's say I put your likeness in an Avengers movie and it makes like $3 trillion. And
Hmm.
you're like, oh, wow, look at me. I'm the star of this movie, made $1 trillion. Where's my cut? No, David. We gave
Hmm.
you $1 million up front.
Hmm.
That's all you'll ever get. And we'll keep making money, money, money off of that. So yeah, that's what the Hollywood thing was. With the corporations using digital twins of people, it's like you can work forever for a company, whether you realize it or not. So my assertion was that companies, if they do this, they take it to a full manifestation, then they should pay the employee a royalty. So if you no longer work at company X, but they're still consulting with your digital twin, you get like 0.10 cents every time they ask your digital
Yeah.
twin a question, which could add up. I thought that would be kind of cool.
Yeah,
How do you feel
that's
about it?
actually an interesting, brings up a lot of interesting scenarios, right? That could you
Yeah.
imagine that you're using a digital twin and somebody went to work for your competition and you're actually you could lose a contract or something based off of your own work.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, that's
That
hilarious.
too.
So yeah, I don't know what to say, Jim. I don't I usually perfectly honest with the audience. I usually like to sort of position you right as just to make sure that people know they could expect if they get an engagement, right? So if I was a vice president of talent acquisition at a good sized company and I reached out to you because you're going to give me information that I can track you down easy enough. Well, what would you do for somebody like that?
For a TA leader,
Yeah, yeah. Like what would you hope to do for somebody like that? I'm a TA leader with 5,000, 10,000 employees. Right?
yeah. Um, we'll probably have a conversation. I would say, what are your trouble spots?
Mm,
What's keeping you up at night? Uh, Here are some suggestions I would give you to make your day a bit easier.
yep,
When I once upon a time, I was the global head of recruiting and sourcing strategy at Randstad SourceRight, and I would talk to different clients and different cultures about their different recruiting issues. So pretty much it would go down like this: Hey, how are you? What's your
yeah.
problem? And I would uh, step into the role of a recruitment therapist, in a sense, and listen to their problem, and then me and my team we would put some analytics together and say this is what we think is the cure for
Yeah.
what ails you. Uh, Go and do it. Come back, you
And
know.
and I suppose the exact same philosophy and formula would be in place, just different outcome with an ATS or somebody in the recruitment space would come to you and say, "Yeah, man, we're missing it here. Like, what, help us out." And you would ask those same
Sure.
questions and just come up with a different answer, right?
Yeah, because um, the advantage of being in the industry for so long, I've seen it change from 97 to present. There's been a lot of changes, right?
Hmm.
But in some ways, it stayed consistent as well.
Hmm.
I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a lot of concern that sourcing tools would make sources obsolete, and
Hmm.
that has not happened, right?
Hmm.
AI is a different beast altogether, but I still hear the same arguments that these tools are going to just displace recruiters and displace sourcers. And I think the same thing that prevented recruiters and sourcers from being displaced early on in the 2000s are the same things that will keep them from being displaced today, which is people want to deal with people. You know, I think anyone can think about where when they may have called um, about a bill or about a check on their prescription, and they're hearing press one for this, press two for that. You just want represent. You just say representative because you just don't want to deal with a machine. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
even I'm even hearing anecdotal evidence when AI systems call someone's phone and they sound very human, right? But right away, pretty much it's a machine calling you and not a person,
Yeah.
and people just want to talk to a person, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, there's that.
Yeah.
There,
You still can't replace the high touch
no,
feeling valued, for the right person, right?
no, no, you
So if
can't.
you were filling 50,000 jobs for a warehouse, maybe, right? But not for a good executive.
Exactly. And I think that it's not to poo-poo the tools because I wouldn't tell anybody not to use these tools.
Hmm.
But I also would say make sure that in your processes you always keep a human in the loop, which is an actual
Hmm.
term. You want to
Yeah.
keep a human in the loop because no matter how awesome the tool you're using may be, the tool is not the ultimate accountability person. If the
Yeah.
tool does something wrong, you can't say, "Hey, it's a tool, not me." Somebody
Mm-hmm.
has to be made accountable for it, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way something will get fixed. I'm looking very closely. Well, a lot of people are looking closely at this major class action suit against Workday.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, yeah, Steve and from Recruit College, or
Yeah,
it's Roth.
Steve
What's like?
Rothberg. Yeah,
Yeah, we had a conversation about it. Yeah,
yeah. I think that the long and short of it is, for those who don't know, somebody said that the Workday system discriminated against him, and that's why he didn't get a job.
yeah,
Which, uh, in this economy, I can't really say
yeah.
it's one thing or the other. But if he's if his if he's able to prove that he was excluded from opportunities systematically through the Workday system, that's going to send shockwaves throughout the HR tech
Mm-hmm.
industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because companies are going to think, why should I invest in this tool if this tool can make a mistake and cost me millions of dollars? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so
That'll
it's
throw people right back into the mix pretty darn quick, right?
yeah. And I think though, if thinking about it from different perspectives, if it turns out that Workday was in the wrong. Their tech was fallible and caused all these issues. Like we said, it's going to cause repercussions, right? And I think part of the repercussion might be that people will rely less on technology and more on human beings, right? Which is cool from a job perspective. But I think that also will have the repercussion of slower hiring,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we're using all these tools because they speed things up and make things more efficient. So if we remove these tools, you're going to have slower turnout. I don't know if companies want that. I think companies will still risk being highly efficient with the occasional bump in the road than to just remove them all together.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. I don't see us going backwards per se. I just see us maybe um, adding more humans in the loop and having more oversight with the
Yeah,
tools.
yeah. Hey, Jim, I'm not going to keep any more of your time, but I'm going to tell everybody
I'm
that
talking
if
too
you
much.
have a major recruiting initiative, um, and you're unsure anything or where to start, you should check out Jim's resources. You should get in touch with him, and he knows everybody in the space. He's incredibly connected, and he can hook you up with the people you need to talk to if he can't do it himself.
Thank you. Check me out, jimstroud.com. Of course, the links will be in the description there.
Yeah, and Jim's going to give me the description so that way I can just cut and paste it and I don't have to worry about making any mistakes.
Yes,
Yeah,
efficiency.
yeah, great connecting with you. I totally love everything you do and keep it up.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.